Revelation. I'm so glad you're here with me on this journey, and I'm excited to start our next book of the Bible. As always, I will be reading through the scriptures with you, and I will be stopping along the way to ask critical thinking questions about what we are reading. I'll give you a little bit of background on the book, but I won't answer these questions because this is a time for you to sit and reflect and pray about God's word and see what He is telling you about the words you're reading. And hopefully, you'll gain a better understanding of the Bible as a whole story. For this episode, I am using the Berean Standard Bible translation. And if you want to read or follow along, I always link in the description of every episode to the readings that correspond with this episode. So last time we read the book of Ezra. And I talked about at the beginning of the last episode that Ezra and Nehemiah, which is the book we're reading today, were at one point one unified book because the two stories really go together. They deal with the same time period, they deal with some of the same issues, they are kind of one cohesive story. Now, Ezra was written by Ezra, Nehemiah is written by Nehemiah, but Ezra shows up in the book of Nehemiah. And they both deal with the people of Israel, the people of God, returning from exile back to Jerusalem. In Ezra, we saw them rebuild the temple, and that was sort of the first half of the book, and then the second half of the book dealt with the issue of God's people marrying pagan women, and we talked about that issue and how Ezra handled that. So Ezra was leading the people in Jerusalem and leading them through that time of rebuilding the temple. Well, as time went on, Jerusalem, they had the temple rebuilding that, but they were facing enemies surrounding Jerusalem. And so they needed to figure out a way to make Jerusalem secure. And that's where God sends Nehemiah and raises him up as a leader. And that's where this book starts, with Nehemiah coming in as a leader to help secure Jerusalem. And similarly to the second half of Ezra, this book is written in the first person, which tells us that it was probably written by Nehemiah, and it's him recording his account of what happened in Jerusalem at this time. Okay, so now we can get started with the book of Nehemiah, and we'll start with Nehemiah chapter 1, and the first section is called Nehemiah's Prayer. And before we start this chapter, I just want to make a note that Deuteronomy 30, 1 through 10, if you want to go back and read that, is connected to this time period because in Deuteronomy 30, at the beginning of that chapter, verses 1 through 10, Moses is telling the Israelites that there is a day that will come when you will be exiled and God will bring you back to your home and will fulfill his promises. And this time period where Nehemiah is right now is sort of the fulfillment of that promise that God made to the Israelites in Deuteronomy 30, 1 through 10. So Nehemiah chapter 1, verse 1. These are the words of Nehemiah, son of Hakaliah. In the month of Kislev, in the 20th year, when I was in the citadel of Susa, Hanani, one of my brothers, arrived with men from Judah. So I questioned them about the remnant of the Jews who had survived the exile.
It's going good.
And they told me,
going good.
The remnant who survived the exile are there in the province, in great trouble
and disgrace. Make this thing come alive,
the wall of Jerusalem is broken down,
this big old
and its
log.
gates are burned with fire. When I heard these words, I sat down and wept, and mourned for days, fasting and praying before the God of heaven. Then I said,
it's going to be
Lord, God of heaven,
something else.
The great and awesome God who keeps his covenant of loving devotion with those who love him and keep his commandments. Let your eyes be open and your ears attentive
Hope you're
to
21
hear the prayer
and
that I, your servant, now pray before you day and night for your servants, the Israelites. I confess the sins that we Israelites have committed against you. Both I and my father's house have sinned. We have behaved corruptly against you and have not kept the commandments, statutes, and ordinances that you gave your servant Moses. Remember, I pray, the word that you commanded your servant Moses when you said, 'If you are unfaithful, I will scatter you among the nations.
We'll make something
If
really
you
cool out
return
of
to
this.
me and keep and practice my commandments,
I'm
and
doing
even if your
good.
exiles
I'm
have
doing
been
real good,
banished to the
actually.
farthest horizon, I will gather them
I
from
feel
there
sorry
and
for the
bring them to
woman.
the place I have chosen as a dwelling for my
They got
name.
abused by that
They are
man.
your servants and your people. You redeemed
He's a
them
piece of
by your
shit.
great power and
And then
mighty
telling
hand.
lies and making AI
Oh, Lord,
videos
may your ear be attentive
of
to my
her.
prayer and to the prayers of your
Like,
servants
that's some
who delight
crazy shit.
to
Oh,
revere
people
your
do
name.
it.
Give your servant success this day, I pray, and grant him mercy in the
I
sight
see it
of
all
his
the
name.
time on TikTok. It's a
At
shame.
that time, I was the cupbearer to the king.
Oh, yeah, never give up.
Okay, so pause there at the end of chapter 1. What did we learn about Nehemiah in this
I
chapter?
try.
Who he was, what his role
Yeah,
was among
sometimes
the community,
I
and
do.
what type of
Honestly, I
person
want to give
he
up
was.
on this.
And then what issue did Nehemiah discover
But
that he felt like he needed to take to
I
the Lord
keep on
in prayer?
going. I know some of you guys like
Why
me.
was Jerusalem such a precious
Some of
city
you
at
guys
this
don't
time
bother coming
that
back.
it needed to
But
be
it's okay.
protected? When Nehemiah found out that the walls had fallen down around
The
Jerusalem
guy's a
and were
piece
in
of shit.
disrepair,
Piece
he
of
saw this
shit.
as something that needed to be fixed. Why do you think
Go look
this
at
was
my
such a
video,
big deal
guys.
At the time?
Go
It's always
follow
important
that
to look at the
woman.
Bible in the
Her name's
historical
Emo.
context of when it was written, and why
Well,
would
not
walls
Emo,
around
but
their city be important during the
I forgot the
time
name of
of the
it.
Bible,
But her
during the
channel.
time that they were
She's
living in
renaming it
Jerusalem?
for some
In
reason.
modern times, we don't really see,
Yeah,
or it's
probably
not as
because
common to
she want to
see
forget about the
walls
guy
around
and
places
move
like it
on.
was during the Bible
And
times.
not
So
letting him
why
find
was
him.
it something that was so
Find her,
common
maybe.
back
I don't
during
know.
that time? And why do you
Something
think it
like
was
that,
important
maybe.
to this
Because
community?
she's
What
scared.
did it
She's
symbolize to the
scared to
people
even go
around them?
home.
What did it symbolize to the people living in Jerusalem? Why do you think that this was something that seemed
She
to
had
be
to
important to
run
them?
away. That's pretty sad. When you
Well,
have
we
to
also
run
have in this chapter
away and the cops
Nehemiah
don't do nothing.
praying to God. And I'm curious what you took away
I'm
from his
working on
prayer.
a
It says that
wood
he
piece.
fasted and prayed
This
for
is what I'm
several
working on.
days. And I want you to think about the way he prayed to God, how he approached God, how he asked for forgiveness, how he asked for what they needed, and how you can sort of learn about prayer through watching Nehemiah or reading or listening to Nehemiah pray.
It's pretty sad that a guy has to do that to a
Okay, so
woman.
now we can start Nehemiah chapter 2, which begins with a section called Nehemiah Sent to Jerusalem. Nehemiah 2, verse 1.
You know,
Now in the month Nisan,
I seen
in
the
the
really
20th year
long
of
video
King
where she was
Artaxerxes,
live
when wine
and
was
she
set
was
before
saying
him,
all that.
I took the wine and gave it to the
And
king.
believe me,
I had never been sad in his presence.
nobody
king
should
said
go
to me,
through that.
Why is your face sad, though you are not ill? This could only be sadness of the heart. I was overwhelmed with fear and replied to the king, May the king live forever. Why should I not be sad when the city where my fathers are buried lies in ruins, and its gates have been destroyed by fire?
I
What is your
mean,
request?
I've been sitting
replied the
here
king.
thinking for a while,
So I prayed
like,
to the God of heaven and
what
answered
the
the
heck?
king,
A girl
If
had
it
to go
pleases the
through
king,
all
and
that.
if your servant has found favor in your sight,
And that's
I ask
sad.
that you send me to Judah, to the
That's pretty
city where my
sad.
fathers are buried, so that I may rebuild it. Then the king, with the queen seated
Most of her
beside him,
followers,
asked
I don't
me,
even think they're doing
How
anything.
long will your journey take?
They should actually
and when
do
will you
something.
return?
Make a video
So
about
it
it.
pleased the king
I
to send
did
me, and I set a time.
because I care
I
about her.
also said to him,
That's
If it pleases the king, may
insane.
letters
I
be given
mean
to
that
me to the
nobody's
governors west of the Euphrates, so that they will grant
actually
me safe passage
faced the
until
guy,
I reach Judah.
or even
And may I have a letter
a
to
big
Asa,
creator on
keeper
there
of the
is
king's
trying to
forest,
make a
so that he will give me timber to
video
make
about her,
beams for the gates of
and
the
because
citadel,
it's
to the
crazy
temple,
what she went
to the
through.
city wall, and for the house I will occupy. And because the gracious hand of my God was upon me,
Man, one story
the
I
king
heard, it was
granted
really
my
tragic,
requests.
is
Then I went to
about
the governors
she had
west
to
of the
go
Euphrates and gave them the king's letters.
running out
The king
of
had
the
also
house
sent army officers and cavalry
and
with
run
me.
away.
But when
House
Sanballat,
to
the
house.
Horonite, and Tobiah, the Ammonite official,
I
heard about
mean,
this,
I
they
don't know
were
if she was
deeply
dressed
disturbed that
or
someone had
what,
come to
but
seek the well-being of the Israelites.
it's
so
kind
pause
of
there at the
crazy.
end of that section. We have Nehemiah, who is also living during the time of Artaxerxes. Nehemiah is still in Persia, but
I'm
just like
working
in
on
Ezra,
woodwork. You
Artaxerxes
guys didn't
sent
know.
a group of people to Jerusalem to rebuild the temple. And now Artaxerxes is sending Nehemiah to Jerusalem to rebuild the wall.
Woodwork.
And so we have Ezra going to Jerusalem first, and then Nehemiah coming after to rebuild the wall. Although there is some debate about the timeline of things. Some people think that Nehemiah was actually the first one to go to Jerusalem and that Ezra came after. But the way it's structured and presented to us here, it seems as if Ezra went first, and then years later, Nehemiah was called to go to Jerusalem and rebuild the wall. So in this section, what can you learn about who Nehemiah was and why the king trusted him enough to send him, to let him leave his service of the king in Persia and travel to Jerusalem?
It's going to get all curved out.
Nehemiah going to God in prayer before even asking the king what he needed. So what does that teach us about how we should interact with God when we need to make important decisions or go down a new path? And then why do you think at the end of this section he says that Sanballat, the Horonite, and Tobiah the Ammonite heard about what he was doing and were deeply disturbed that someone had come to seek the well-being of the Israelites? Why would they be disturbed? Who are these people, and why do you think there would be some people out there who would be disturbed that someone wanted to help the Israelites? The next section is Nehemiah inspects the walls.
But it's
Verse
okay.
11.
It's going to get all
After I
curved
had
out.
arrived in Jerusalem and had been there 3 days, I set out at night with a few men. I did not tell anyone what my God had laid on my heart to do for Jerusalem. The only animal with me was the one on which I was riding. So I went out at night through the valley gate,
toward
the
all
well
get
of the
carved
serpent,
out when
and the
it's
dung
done.
gate. And I inspected the walls of Jerusalem that had been broken down and the gates that had been destroyed by fire. Then I went on to the fountain gate and the king's pool, but there was no room for the animal under me to get through. So I went up the valley by night and inspected the wall. Then I headed back and re-entered through the valley gate. The officials did not know where I had
wish
gone
I had
or
one
what
of
I was
those
doing,
hammers.
for I had not yet told the Jews
I
or
need
priests or nobles or officials
big
or
old
any of the
hammer.
workers. Then I said to them,
That's
"You see
what
the
I
trouble
need.
we are in.
That's what I really need.
Jerusalem lies in ruins, and its
It
gates
would
have
help
been
me out
burned
a
down.
lot.
Come, let us rebuild the wall of Jerusalem, so it will
Oh,
no longer be a disgrace." Okay, so pause there. Why the secrecy? Why do you think
big
Nehemiah
hammer.
went out to inspect the gate before he even brought any information or any ideas to the officials and the priests? And when he takes his survey of the walls and the gates, he finds them in ruins, some burned by fire. So why is it important to rebuild the city? What might it signify to the surrounding people, or even to the people within the city, if their city lies in ruins? What would that do to the people's spirits?
That's all you need is a chisel.
Verse 18. I also told them
Oh,
about
I
the
ain't
gracious hand
reviewing.
of my
I
God
ain't
upon me
fucking reading
and
the
what the king
message
had
that
said
got
to me.
reviewed.
Let us start rebuilding, they replied, and they
You
set
gotta
their
be
hands
reviewed.
to this good work.
'Cause
But when
obviously,
Sanballat, the Horonite, Tobiah the Ammonite official, and
you
Geshem
don't
the
like
Arab
what you
heard
wrote.
about this, they mocked us and ridiculed us, saying, "What is this you are doing? Are you rebelling against the king?" So I answered them and said, "The God of heaven is the one who will grant us success. We, his servants, will start rebuilding, but you have no portion,
See,
right,
actual thing,
claim
YouTube does
in
its job
Jerusalem." Okay,
sometimes.
so pause there at the end of chapter 2. What does it tell us about this community that when Nehemiah was issued to them, they immediately started working and they immediately set out to rebuild the walls. And then we have the people outside of the Israelites who are ridiculing them and saying, "Why are you doing this? This isn't going to work. Do you even have permission from the king?" Why do you think they're ridiculing them? Why do you think they're treating them this way?
Well,
And then what about Nehemiah's response? We know that Nehemiah has permission from the king because Artaxerxes sent him and allowed him to go accomplish his task. But does he tell the people who are mocking him that? Does he tell them that he already has permission from the king? Why do you think instead of telling them that he has permission from the king, Nehemiah's response is to let them know that God is the one who will grant them success? And does this remind you of some of the parts of Ezra's story from the last book that we read? If you go back to chapter 4, there's an entire section about people and enemies of Judah trying to stop them from rebuilding the temple, trying to bribe them, going to the king, because they were opposed to Ezra and the Israelites rebuilding the temple. So how do we see something similar here in Nehemiah's story? Okay, so now we can start Nehemiah chapter 3, which begins with a section called the Builders of the Walls. Chapter 3, verse 1. At the sheep gate, Eliashib
you guys
the
don't
high
think I
priest
know what
and
you
his
guys
fellow
are writing
priests
all the
began
time.
rebuilding. They dedicated it and installed its doors. After building as far as the Tower of the 100 and the Tower of Hananel, they dedicated the wall. The men of Jericho built next to Eliashib, and Zakur, son of Imri, built next to them. The fish gate was rebuilt by the sons of Hassanah. They laid its beams and installed its doors, bolts, and bars. Next to them, Meremoth, son of Uriah, the son of Hakaz, made repairs. Next to him, Meshullam, son of Berechiah, the son of Meshezabel, made repairs. And next to him, Zadok, son of Baana, made repairs as well. Next to him, the Tekoites made repairs, but their nobles did not put their shoulders to the work under their supervisors. The Jeshanah gate was repaired by Joiada, son of Paseah, and Meshullam, son of Besadiah.
No, I don't have
They
a
laid its beams and
workbench.
installed its doors,
You wanna buy
bolts,
me
and
one?
bars. Next to them, repairs were made by Melatiah the Gibeonite, Jadon,
Oh, what's up,
and the
Twilight
men of
Moon? How you
Gibeon and
doing?
Mizpah, who were under the authority of the governor of the region west of the Euphrates.
We're listening to scriptures
Next to
today
them, Uzziel, son of Harhiah,
and
one of the goldsmiths,
the
made
Bible.
repairs, and next to him, Hananiah, son of the perfumer, made repairs. They fortified Jerusalem as far as the broad wall. Next to them, Raphiah,
Well,
son of Hur,
the Bible
ruler of
anyway.
a half-district of Jerusalem, made repairs.
We're
Next to
making
him,
woodwork.
Jediah,
We're doing woodwork.
son of Harmaph, made repairs
Yeah.
across from his house. And next to him, Hattush, son of
Thank you for
Hashabniah,
helping.
made repairs.
Getting people
Malchijah,
in.
son of Haram, and Hashub, son of Pahath Moab, repaired another section, as well as the tower of the ovens. And next to them, Shallum, son of Halahesh, ruler of the other half-district of Jerusalem, made repairs with the help of his daughters. The valley gate was repaired by Hanan
I
and
know
the
you
residents
sit back
of
there and lurk a
Zanoah.
lot.
They rebuilt
It's
it,
okay.
installed its doors, bolts, and bars, and repaired 1,000 cubits of the
I see
wall
you lurking.
as far as the dung gate. The dung gate was repaired by Malchijah, son of Rechab, ruler of the district of Beth Hakarim. He rebuilt it and installed its doors, bolts, and bars. The fountain gate was repaired by Shallum,
Oh,
son
man.
of Kolhaza, ruler of the district of Mizpah. He rebuilt it, roofed it, and installed its doors,
Yeah,
bolts,
me and
and
Jenny
bars.
got in an argument
He also
a couple
repaired the
minutes
wall of
ago.
the pool of Shelah, near the king's garden,
Bad,
as
but
far as the
it's
stairs
alright.
that descend from the city of David. Beyond him, Nehemiah, son of Osbuk, ruler of a
So,
half-district Zer
There's a
made
video
repairs up
I
to a point
made of the
opposite the tombs of
woman.
David, as far as the artificial
There's
pool
this
in the
woman that
house of the
got
mighty.
abused.
Okay, so pause there at about the halfway point in chapter 3. So chapter 3 is all about them rebuilding the walls,
If you guys
rebuilding
can
and
go check
fortifying
that
the city.
out,
And we have a lot of names, and we have a lot of this person built next to this person, built next to this person, and
if you
this
guys can
place.
help her
And we have a lot
out,
of information about what they did and how they all
anyway,
repaired the wall. So why is
that
it
will be a
important that we know
blessing.
the names of these specific people and what they did and how they contributed? Why can't chapter
She
3
got
just
abused,
say, and they rebuilt the walls and everything
so
was
she's
back to
gonna
normal,
probably
or they
need some
rebuilt the
things
walls and
that I
Jerusalem was
can't
safe
afford.
again? Why do they go into so much detail, and why is it important
You know,
that the
like
Old Testament and the Bible in general have these details of specific
clothes
names,
and all.
people, and what they
She didn't
did?
take it, everything.
Okay, chapter
You
3,
know,
verse 17.
she
Next to
ran
him,
away
the
with the
Levites
clothes
made
on her
repairs
back.
under Rahum, son of Bani, and next to him,
She's trying to
Hashabiah,
get
ruler
away
of the
with the
half
guy.
district
Trying
of
to get away
Keilah,
from the
made
guy.
repairs for his district.
Go figure.
Next
She
to
don't
him,
have
their
shit.
countrymen made repairs
She
under
may have her
Uri,
cat.
son
Yeah.
of Henadad, ruler of the other
Took
half
that, maybe
district
a
of Keilah.
couple of clothes
And next to
items,
him,
but
Ezer, son of Jeshua,
she
ruler of
basically
Mizpah, repaired another section opposite the ascent to the
ran
armory,
away with
near the
nothing.
angle in the wall. Next
She's
to
starting
him,
from
Baruch,
fresh.
son of Zabai, diligently repaired another section from
Imagine
the
you getting
angle to the doorway of
freaking
the house
abused
of
by a
Eliashib the
man,
high priest. Next to
and
him,
then starting
Meremoth,
all
son of
over
Uriah, the son of Hakaz, repaired
because
another
you ran away
section
from
from
the
the
guy.
doorway of the house of Eliashib to the end of the
And
house.
some of your
And next to
stuff
him,
is
the
at
priests from the surrounding area made repairs.
the place that you
Beyond
lived
them,
at
Benjamin and Hashub made repairs in front of their house, and
because
next
of
to
a
them,
coward that wants to beat
Azariah,
her
son of Maaseiah,
and lock
the
her
son of
up. That
Ananiah,
was a
made
bad
repairs
thing.
beside his house. After him, Benri, son of
Lock her
Henadad,
up.
repaired another section from the
Didn't
house
let
of
her do
Azariah
nothing
to
but
the
clean.
angle in the corner.
Like,
And
really?
Palal, son of
That's
Azai, made
a
repairs
shame.
opposite the angle and the tower that juts out from the upper palace of the king near the
It's a
courtyard
real
of the guard.
shame when a
Next to
fucking
him,
coward out there
Hodiah, son
does
of
that.
Parash, and the temple servants living on the hill of Ophel made repairs opposite the water gate toward the east and the tower that juts out. And next to them, the Tekoites repaired another section from a point opposite the great tower that juts out to the wall of Ophel. Above the horse gate, each of the priests made repairs in front of his own house. Next to them, Zadok, son of Immer, made repairs opposite his house, and next to him, Shemaiah, son of Shechaniah, the guard of the east gate, made repairs.
But it's a shame
Next to him,
that
Hananiah, son of
people do
Shelemiah,
that.
as well as Hanun, the sixth son of Zalaph, repaired another section. Next to them, Meshullam, son of Berechiah, made repairs opposite his own quarters. Next to him, Malchijah, one of the goldsmiths, made repairs as far as the house of the temple servants and the merchants, opposite the inspection gate, and as far as the upper room above the corner. And
That's
between the upper
crazy.
room above the corner and the sheep gate, the goldsmiths and merchants made repairs. Okay, so pause there at the end of chapter 3. As we read through
Crazy
that
that
chapter
a
and
man
saw
would abuse a
everyone
woman
and each person
and just have
contributed
no
to
remorse.
repairing the wall, what did we learn about the community? How did we see each group or each person taking responsibility for their own section of the wall and working together to complete this task that they all believed in? What can that teach us about community now and about how we should work together to fulfill our goals and to
Yeah.
help each other out and
We
to
should.
fulfill the things that God has called us
That's for
as a
sure.
community to do?
We should all do
Okay, so
that.
now we can start Nehemiah 4,
Help each
which
other
begins in a section
Christians
called
out.
The Work Ridiculed. Chapter 4, verse 1. Now when Sanballat heard that we were rebuilding the wall, he was furious and filled with indignation. He ridiculed the Jews before his associates in the army of Samaria, saying, What are these feeble Jews doing? Can they restore the wall by themselves? Will they offer sacrifices? Will they complete it in a day? Can they bring these burnt stones back to life from mounds of rubble? Okay, so pause there. Who is Sanballat and why is he ridiculing the Jews and the work that they're doing?
I need a wooden table. I mean, not a wood table,
Verse
but
3. Then
something to
Tobiah
work
the
on my
Ammonite,
wood
who was beside
projects
him,
with.
said,
Like,
if even a fox
a
were to climb on
table
what they are
would be
building,
okay,
it would
but
break down their wall
I
of
think
stones.
I need
Hear us, O God, for we are
a table that
despised.
actually
Turn their scorn back upon
works
their own
on
heads, and let them be
where you
taken
can
as
work on
plunder to a
wood.
land of captivity. Do not cover up their iniquity, or let their sin be blotted out from your
I
sight.
mean, if I could get
For they
another
have provoked
table,
the builders.
and maybe
So we rebuilt the wall until all of it was
not
joined
just a
together
chisel,
up to half
but
its height.
one of
For the
those
people
things
had
that
a
hold
mind
the
to
wood
work.
together.
When Sanballat and Tobiah,
That would be
together
good.
with the Arabs, Ammonites, and Ashdodites,
Because if I
heard
want to
that
do
the
more
repair to the
woodwork,
walls of Jerusalem was
which I love
progressing,
doing,
and that the gaps were being closed,
I don't have to get
they
one
were
of those.
furious. And all of
And
them
then, I
conspired to
got a
come and
table,
fight
but we
against
really need
Jerusalem
another art
and
table.
create a hindrance.
We really do.
Okay, so pause there. We have this
We're gonna
group,
get one.
these
We're
groups of people
planning on
ridiculing
working on
the
getting one.
work that the Jews are doing, that Nehemiah and the other people living in Jerusalem are doing. But how did God's people overcome that ridicule?
Well, I
and
could do this
continue
sitting
to
down.
work?
It ain't no problem.
What drove them to keep doing the work that they were doing? And why are all these groups conspiring to fight against Jerusalem? The next section is discouragement overcome. Verse 9. So we prayed to our God and posted a guard against them day and night. Meanwhile, the people of Judah said, the strength of the laborer fails, and there is so much rubble that we will never be able to rebuild the wall. And our enemies said, before they know or see a thing, we will come into their midst, kill them, and put an end to the work. At that time, the Jews who lived nearby came and told us 10 times over, wherever you turn, they will attack us. So I stationed men behind the lowest sections of the wall, at the vulnerable areas. I stationed them by families with their swords, spears, and bows. After I had made an inspection, I stood up and said to the nobles, the officials, and the rest of the people, do not be afraid of them. Remember the Lord, who is great and awesome, and fight for your brothers, your sons, and your daughters, your wives, and your homes. When our enemies heard that we were aware of their scheme and that God had frustrated it, each of us returned to his own work on the wall. And from that day on, half of my servants did the work, while the other half held spears, shields, bows, and armor. The officers stationed themselves behind all the people of Judah who were rebuilding the wall. The laborers who carried materials worked with one hand and held a weapon with the other. And each of the builders worked with his sword strapped at his side. But the trumpeter stayed beside me. Then I said to the nobles, the officials, and the rest of the people, the work is great and extensive, and we are spread out far from one another along the wall. Wherever you hear the sound of a horn, rally to us there. Our God will fight for us. So we continued the work, while half of the men held spears from the break of dawn until the stars came out. At that time, I also said to the people, let every man and his servant spend the night inside Jerusalem, so that they can stand guard by night and work by day. So neither I, nor my brothers, nor my servants, nor the guards with me changed out of our clothes. Each carried his weapon, even to go for water. Okay, so pause there at the end of chapter 4. How did Nehemiah and the people of Jerusalem respond to the ridicule and the threats from the people outside of their community. And do you think their plan worked? Do you think they came up with a good plan to protect themselves while they continued the work they needed to do? And what does it tell you about Nehemiah, that he was one of the people standing guard? He was also doing the work with them. Okay, so now we can start Nehemiah chapter 5, which begins with a section called Nehemiah Defends the Oppressed. Nehemiah 5, verse 1. About that time, there was a great outcry from the people and their wives against their fellow Jews. Some were saying, "We and our sons and daughters are numerous. We must get grain in order to eat and stay alive." Others were saying, "We are mortgaging our fields, our vineyards, and our homes to get grain during the famine." Still others were saying, "We have borrowed money to pay the king's tax on our fields and vineyards. We and our children are just like our countrymen and their children, yet we are subjecting our sons and daughters to slavery. Some of our daughters are already enslaved, but we are powerless to redeem them because our fields and vineyards belong to others." When I heard their outcry and these complaints, I became extremely angry, and after serious thought, I rebuked the nobles and officials, saying, "You are exacting usury from your own brothers." So I called a large assembly against them and said, "We have done our best to buy back our Jewish brothers who were sold to foreigners, but now you are selling your own brothers, that they may be sold back to us." But they remained silent, for they could find nothing to say. Okay, so pause there. One quick thing I want to say is in verse 7, Nehemiah tells them, "You are exacting usury from your own brothers." That word usury, U-S-U-R-Y, if you haven't heard that word before, the definition is the illegal action or practice of lending money at an unnecessarily high rate of interest. So what are these people doing? What is going on in the community right now? How are they treating each other? And why is Nehemiah so angry? Verse 9. So I continued, "What you are doing is not right. Shouldn't you walk in the fear of our God to avoid the reproach of our foreign enemies? I, as well as my brothers and my servants, have been lending the people money and grain. Please, let us stop this usury. Please, restore to them immediately their fields, vineyards, olive groves, and houses, along with the percentage of the money, grain, new wine, and oil that you have been assessing them." "We will restore it," they replied, "and we will require nothing more from them. We will do as you say." So I summoned
We
the
will
priests
do as
and
you
required of the nobles and
say.
officials an oath that they would do what they had promised. I also shook out the folds of my robe and said, "May God likewise shake out of his house and possession every man who does not keep this promise. May such a man be shaken out and have nothing." The whole assembly said, "Amen."
Oh,
And they praised
man.
the Lord, and the people did as they had promised. Okay, so pause there at the end of that section. So the situation that's going on is we have some rich people in the community who are taking advantage of those who have less. They would give out these loans, and then when people couldn't pay, they would take over their land and charge really high interest rates
Alright,
and treat
here's
the
what
people
we'll
who
do.
could not afford to pay very poorly.
We'll work
So what
over
is
here a little
Nehemiah's
bit.
response to this?
Show you guys what we're doing.
And
We're
why was
working with.
Nehemiah so angry about it? When we are blessed with a lot of resources, how does God want us to treat those who don't have as many resources as we do? What does this story reveal to us about how we as Christians, as people who follow God, should take care of each other, how we should treat each other, how we should do business, how we should care for those who are less fortunate? We see many times throughout Scripture about how God tells us to take care of the poor and the oppressed, the widows, the children, etc. And we see here Nehemiah upholding that desire that God puts in his people's hearts. And another action that we see in this section is Nehemiah seeing injustice within God's community and going to the people who are causing harm and imploring them to stop.
Wow.
He's standing up for the oppressed. So how can we take Nehemiah's example in our own lives and protect or help the people in our own churches, in our own communities, in our own families who are being oppressed or experiencing situations like this, or situations in our own lives that God would see as an injustice? The next section is Nehemiah's generosity, verse 14. Furthermore, from the day King Artaxerxes appointed me to be their governor in the land of Judah, from his 20th year until his 32nd year, 12 years total, neither I nor my brothers ate the food allotted to the governor.
The more I can work on
the governors before me had heavily burdened the people, taking from their bread and wine plus 40 shekels of silver. Their servants also oppressed the people, but I did not do this because of my fear of God.
I just gotta work
Instead,
with that guy.
I devoted myself to the construction of the wall, and all my servants were gathered there for the work. We did not acquire any land. There were 150 Jews and officials at my table, besides the guests from the surrounding nations. Each day 1 ox, 6 choice sheep, and some fowl were prepared for me.
You gotta work
And
with
once every
what
10
you got.
days, an abundance of all kinds of wine was provided. But I did not demand the food allotted to the governor, because the burden on the people was so heavy. Remember me favorably, O my God, for all that I have done for this people. Okay, so pause there at the end of chapter 5. What do we learn about Nehemiah's generosity and his humility as a leader? We saw the people come to Nehemiah and say, we're hungry, we don't have enough food, we're being taken advantage of.
Good carving.
And so instead, like the governors before him, instead of taking all this food that was given to the governor because of his status, he denied that so that he could give to his people who were in need. So what does that tell us about what a godly leader should be? When we are put in positions of leadership, whether we are bosses at work, leaders of a family, leaders of a church, leaders of a city, leaders of a country, leaders of a state, what should our priority be? Should our priority be the status and taking and using resources that we don't need for ourselves? Or should it be leading with humility, following God, listening to Him, and taking care of the people that have been entrusted to us?
Taking care of the people entrusted to you.
What was Nehemiah's main focus as a leader? And do you think his qualities made him a strong leader?
Does. You got a fucking guy in office,
so now
Joe
we can start
Biden, that
Nehemiah
doesn't know how to
chapter 6,
fucking
which
take
begins
care
with
of
a
his
section
people at
called
all.
Sanballat's Conspiracy. Chapter 6, verse 1. When Sanballat, Tobiah, Geshem the Arab, and the rest of our enemies heard that I had rebuilt the wall and not a gap was left, though to that time I had not yet installed the doors and the gates, Sanballat and Geshem sent me this message. Come, let us meet together in one of the villages on the plain of Ono. But they were planning to harm me. So I sent messengers to them saying, I am doing a great work and cannot come down. Why should the work stop while I leave it to go down to you? 4 times they sent me the same message, and each time I gave the same reply. The 5th time, Sanballat sent me the same message by his young servant, who had in his hand an unsealed letter that read, It is reported among the nations, and Geshem agrees, that you and the Jews are plotting to revolt, and this is why you are building the wall. According to these reports, you are to become their king, and you have even appointed prophets in Jerusalem to proclaim on your behalf, there is a
I'm gonna go
king
back
in
to
Judah.
lap.
Soon these rumors will
Better
reach the ears of the
hold it
king.
like
So
this
come, let us confer together.
than anything,
Then I
cause
sent him this reply. There is
this
nothing to these
motherfucker
rumors you are
wood
spreading. You are inventing them in your
hard
own
to
mind.
do
For they were all trying to frighten
on the
us,
table.
saying their hands will be weakened in the work, and it will never be finished. But now, my God, strengthen my hands. Okay, so pause there. Why are these men trying to attack Nehemiah and trying to stop the work that they're doing? And what strategies are they using to try to stop the work? And what does it tell us about Nehemiah that he sees through their tricks? Verse 10. Later, I went to the house of Shemaiah, son of Delaiah, the son of Mechatabel, who was confined to his house. He said, let us meet at the house of God inside the temple. Let us shut the temple doors, because they are coming to kill you. By night they are coming to kill you. But I replied, should a man like me run away? Should one like me go into the temple to save his own life? I will not go. I realized that God had not sent him, but that he had uttered this prophecy against me because Tobiah and Sanballat had hired him. He had been hired to intimidate me so that I would sin by doing as he suggested, so they could give me a bad name in order to discredit me. Oh my God. Remember Tobiah and Sanballat for what they have done, and also Noadiah the prophetess and the other prophets who tried to intimidate me. Okay, so pause there. We have more people conspiring against Nehemiah. But how does Nehemiah have the wisdom to see through their lies and to see what they're actually planning?
Right?
The next section is completion of the wall, verse 15. So the wall was completed in 52 days, on the 25th of Elul. When all our enemies heard about this, all the surrounding nations were afraid and disheartened, for they realized that this task had been accomplished by our God. Also in those days, the nobles of Judah sent many letters to Tobiah, and Tobiah's letters came back to them. For many in Judah were bound by oaths to him, since he was a son-in-law of Shechaniah, son of Ara, and his son Jehohanan had married the daughter of Meshullam, son of Berechiah. Moreover, these nobles kept reporting to me Tobiah's good deeds, and they relayed my words to him, and Tobiah sent letters to intimidate me. Okay, so pause there at the end of chapter 6 and just reflect on the work that has been done. The wall has been completed. So what does that mean for the people of God? What does that mean for the Israel community? And why is this so significant to them? Okay, so now we can start Nehemiah chapter 7, which begins with a section called Securing the City. Nehemiah 7 verse 1. When the wall had been rebuilt, and I had set the doors in place, the gatekeepers, singers, and Levites were appointed. Then I put my brother Hanani in charge of Jerusalem, along with Hananiah, the commander of the fortress, because he was a faithful man who feared God more than most. And I told them, do not open the gates of Jerusalem until the sun is hot. While the guards are on duty, keep the doors shut and securely fastened, and appoint the residents of Jerusalem as guards, some at their posts and some at their own homes. Okay, so pause there at the end of that little section. Why do you think Nehemiah gives this order not to open the gates until the sun is hot? Okay, the next section is the list of returning exiles. And this is going to be a long list of names, so just prepare yourselves for that. But this is a pretty much identical or very similar list to the one that's listed in Ezra 2. So you can kind of look at those two sections and compare them. So this section is called the list of returning exiles, Nehemiah 7 verse 4. Now the city was large and spacious, but there were few people in it, and the houses had not yet been rebuilt. Then my God put into my heart to assemble the nobles, the officials, and the people to be enrolled by genealogy. I found the genealogical register of those who had first returned, and I found the following written in it. Okay, so pause there. It says that Nehemiah found this genealogical record. So if it's similar or identical to the one that Ezra lists in Ezra 2, who do you think wrote this genealogical register? Where do you think he found it and who wrote it in the first place? Verse 6. These are the people of the province who came up from the captivity of the exiles, carried away to Babylon by Nebuchadnezzar its king. They returned to Jerusalem and Judah, each to his own town, accompanied by Zerubbabel, Jeshua, Nehemiah, Azariah, Raamiah, Nahamani, Mordecai, Bilshan, Mizpareth, Bigvai, Nahum, and Baanah. This is the count of the men of Israel. The descendants of Parash, 2,172. The descendants of Shephatiah, 372. The descendants of Ara, 652. The descendants of Baath, Moab, through the line of Jeshua and Joab, 2,818. The descendants of Elam, 1,254. The descendants of Zatu, 845. The descendants of Zekai, 760. The descendants of Binui, 648. The descendants of Babai, 628. The descendants of Ozgid, 2,322. The descendants of Adoniram, 667. The descendants of Bigvai, 2,067. The descendants of Adon, 655. The descendants of Otter, through Hezekiah, 98. The descendants of Hashum, 328. The descendants of Bazai, 324. The descendants of Harif, 112. The descendants of Gibeon, 95. The men of Bethlehem and Netophah, 188.
If you guys could please hit that
128.
like.
The men of Beth Asmaveth, 42. The men of Kiriath Jearim, Kephirah, and Beerith,
Sitting here.
743. The men of Ramah and Geba, 621. The men of Michmash, 122. The men of Bethel and Ai, 123. The men of the other Nebo, 52. The descendants of the other Elam,
Do me a favor,
1,254.
go
The descendants of Haram, 320.
like
The
that
men of
video I
Jericho,
put out today.
345. The men of Lod, Hadid, and Ano, 721. And the descendants of Sanaa, 3,930. The priests, the descendants of Jediah, through the house of Jeshua, 973. The descendants of Immer, 1,052. The descendants of Pasher,
If you guys could
1,247.
comment on it, it'd
And
be
the
great,
descendants of
'cause
Haram,
I want to hear what you guys
1,017.
think about it.
The
That's
Levites,
crazy.
the descendants of Jeshua, through
What
Kadmiel, through
happened
the
to her
line of
was
Hodeva, 74. The
insane.
singers, the descendants of Asaph, 148. The gatekeepers, the descendants of Shalom, the
It may
descendants
be a
of Adar,
long
the
video,
descendants
but
of Talmon, the descendants of Akub, the descendants of Hatita, and the
it
descendants
was
of
meant to be
Shobai,
a long video.
138 in all. The temple servants, the descendants of Ziha, the descendants of Hasapha, the descendants of Tabaoth, the descendants of Keres, the descendants of Sia, the descendants of Padan, the descendants of Lebanah, the descendants of Hagabah, the descendants of Shomai, the descendants of Hanan, the descendants of Gedel, the descendants of Gahar, the descendants of Raya, the descendants of Rezin, the descendants of Nakoda, the descendants of Gazam, the descendants of Uzzah, the descendants of Paseah, the descendants of Basai, the descendants of Meunim, the descendants of Nepheshazim, the descendants of Bakbuk, the descendants of Hakapha, the descendants of Harur, the descendants of Baslit, the descendants of Mahida, the descendants of Harsha, the descendants of Barkos, the descendants of Sisera, the descendants of Tema, the descendants of Neziah, and the descendants of Hatipha, the descendants of the servants of Solomon, the descendants of Sotai, the descendants of Sophereth, the descendants of Perida, the descendants of Jaala, the descendants of Darkon, the descendants of Gedal, the descendants of Shephatiah, the descendants of Hattil, the descendants of Pochereth Hazabon, and the descendants of Ammon. The temple servants and the descendants of the servants of Solomon numbered 392 in all. The following came up from Tel Malal, Tel Harsha, Kerub, Aden, and Immer, but could not prove that their families were descended from Israel. The descendants of Deliah, the descendants of Tobiah, and the descendants of Nekoda, 642 in all. And from among the priests, the descendants of Hobiah, the descendants of Hakuz, and the descendants of Barzillai, who had married a daughter of Barzillai the Gileadite, and was called by their name. These men searched for their family records, but they could not find them, and so were excluded from the priesthood as unclean. The governor ordered them not to eat the most holy things until there was a priest to consult the Urim and the Thummim. The whole assembly numbered 42,360, in addition to their 7,337 men servants and maid servants, as well as their 245 male and female singers. They had 736 horses, 245 mules, 435 camels, and 6,720 donkeys. The next section is offerings by the exiles. Verse 70. Some of the heads of the families contributed to the project. The governor gave the treasury 1,000 darics of gold, 50 bowls, and 530 priestly garments. And some of the heads of the families gave to the treasury for the project 20,000 darics of gold and 2,200 minas of silver. The rest of the people gave a total of 20,000 darics of gold, 2,000 minas of silver, and 67 priestly garments. So the priests, Levites, gatekeepers, singers, and temple servants, along with some of the people and the rest of the Israelites, settled in their own towns, and by the 7th month the Israelites had settled in their towns. Okay, so pause there at the end of chapter 7 and reflect again on the amount of people who came back to Jerusalem after having been exiled under King Nebuchadnezzar, and how they must feel coming back to their home. And then why do you think some of the heads of families contributed to the project that was going on and gave money to help the project be completed? Okay, so now we can start Nehemiah chapter 8. This is going to be the first chapter where Ezra appears in Nehemiah, and it's going to start with a section called Ezra Reads the Law. And if you look back in Deuteronomy 31, 9 through 13, you see where Moses gives a commandment that when you celebrate this certain festival, you should gather everyone together and read the law. And so that's what's going on in this section. So we can start with Nehemiah 8, verse 1 in the section Ezra Reads the Law. At that time, all the people gathered together in the square before the water gate, and they asked Ezra the scribe to bring out the book of the law of Moses, which the Lord had commanded for Israel. On the first day of the 7th month, Ezra the priest brought the law before the assembly of men and women, and all who could listen and understand. So Ezra read it aloud from daybreak until noon, as he faced the square before the water gate, in front of the men and women and those who could understand. And all the people listened attentively to the book of the law. Ezra the scribe stood on a high wooden platform built for this occasion. At his right stood Mattithiah, Shema, Ananiah, Uriah, Hilkiah, and Maaseiah. And at his left were Pedaiah, Mishael, Malchijah, Hashum, Hashbaddanah, Zechariah, and Meshullam. Okay, so pause there. Why do you think it's important, and why do you think God gave this command to read the law aloud to the people? Every 7 years, the community would get together and read God's law in this way, in this public way, as everybody gathered together to listen. So why is it important to be reminded of God's law? Why would it be important for people who have been a part of the community of Israel for a long time to hear these laws repeated? And why would this tradition be important for people new to the community of Israel, or children, or young people in the community? Today we can read the Bible anytime we want. We have access to it. It's written down for us in a language that we can understand. Was that the case for the people of Israel? Did every family have their own lists of the laws? Were they kept only by the priests? Were they kept in a space where someone could go and look at them at any time? How did the people come to know the laws? Verse 5. Ezra opened the book in full view of all the people, since he was standing above them all. And as he opened it, all the people stood up. Then Ezra blessed the Lord, the great God, and with their hands uplifted, all the people said, Amen, Amen. Then they bowed down and worshipped the Lord with their faces to the ground. The Levites, Jeshua, Bani, Sherebiah, Jamin, Akub, Shabethai, Hodiah, Maaseiah, Kelita, Azariah, Jozabad, Hanan, and Peliah instructed the people in the law as they stood in their places. So they read from the book of the law of God, explaining it and giving insight so that the people could understand what was being read. Nehemiah the governor, Ezra the priest and scribe, and the Levites who were instructing the people said to all of them, This day is holy to the Lord your God. Do not mourn or weep. For all the people were weeping as they heard the words of the law. When Nehemiah told them, Go and eat what is rich, drink what is sweet, and send out portions to those who have nothing prepared, since today is holy to our Lord. Do not grieve, for the joy of the Lord is your strength. And the Levites calmed all the people, saying, Be still, since today is holy. Do not grieve. Then all the people began to eat and drink, to send out portions, and to rejoice greatly, because they understood the words that had been made known to them. Okay, so pause there. Why do you think the people were weeping as Ezra read the law and these people taught the law to them? And then, even though they were weeping and feeling these emotions, why do you think Ezra told them to not mourn or weep? And why did Nehemiah remind them of God's joy and the joy that he gives us? Because clearly the words of the law affected the people of Israel. But Ezra and Nehemiah wanted to remind them that this is not a day for mourning, this is a day for joy, because that day was a holy day. So how could the people of Israel find joy among their mourning and their weeping? The next section is the Feast of Tabernacles. Verse 13. On the second day of the month, the heads of all the families, along with the priests and Levites, gathered around Ezra the scribe to study the words of the law. And they found written in the law, which the Lord had commanded through Moses, that the Israelites were to dwell in booths during the feast of the 7th month. So they proclaimed this message and spread it throughout their towns and in Jerusalem, saying, Go out to the hill country and bring back branches of olive, wild olive, myrtle, palm, and other leafy trees to make booths, as it is written. And the people went out, brought back branches, and made booths on their own rooftops, in their courtyards, in the court of the house of God, and in the squares by the water gate, and by the gate of Ephraim. The whole assembly who had returned from exile made booths and lived in them. From the days of Joshua son of Nun until that day, the Israelites had not celebrated like this, and there was great rejoicing. Day after day, from the first day to the last, Ezra read from the book of the law of God. The Israelites kept the feast for 7 days, and on the 8th day they held an assembly according to the ordinance. Okay, so pause there at the end
Done
of
doing the
chapter
word
8.
word
What does it
today.
tell us about the people of Israel that on the second day the heads of the families came together and decided to not just listen to the law, but to study the law? And then what did they discover from studying the law? And when they discovered this piece
But anyway,
of
I
the
hope you
law
guys had
that
a
told
fun
them
time.
how to celebrate this festival, and they went out and told the people of Israel